My Burbank Talks presents another episode of Meet the Candidate, the show where we invite anyone appearing on the Burbank ballot in the 2024 election to join us here and give our listeners a chance to learn about their background and the issues important to them. Now, let's join our podcast.
Hello, Burbank. Craig Short here with you once again with another Meet the Candidate episode. We've done numerous episodes now, and we've got a lot of great feedback. People say they love these episodes. They love to hear what the candidate has to say on a one-on-one basis, where he's not being rushed by a time limit or anything else. So we enjoy doing them also. And remember, if you're a candidate on the Burbank ballot, your name appears there on the ballot, send me an email at news@myburbank.com, and we'd be glad to get you on. Okay, so today we have Mike Van Gorder with us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely, glad to have you here. To give you a little background here, he's a father of two gorgeous girls.
True.
Nobody's going to argue with that, of course. One that he likes to call with leadership potential. And the other, well, I guess she's 2 years old, right? So
She's just loud.
there you go. He's been married to his best friend for over a decade. He works as a professional housing analyst, and he's earned his master's degree. Where'd you get your degree from?
UCLA.
Oh, very good.
Although I do like to note that it happened mostly in my kitchen because COVID hit when I was just a few months into my tenure at UCLA. So, yeah, it was extremely difficult online-only learning while I also had to keep my job down and raise a toddler at the time. So that is just the multitasking that had to go into all of those things all at once. Hardest thing I ever managed in my life.
I think it was tough for you. How about all those elementary school kids, too? You know, they say that screwed them up for many years.
I genuinely can't imagine that, seriously.
Let's see. He spent 6 years as a housing insecure renter, which turned him into a tenants' rights activist. Since then, he is now living as a housing insecure homeowner for the past 2 years. He is a musician, a union member, a decent baker. Oh, and we have another baker in the race here.
Amateur.
And a cyclist. He trained amateur mixed martial arts for nearly a decade, but only got good enough to not be afraid of anyone. Not necessarily to win.
Sure. Yeah.
I like that. Okay, that's great. And he says losing doesn't scare him, which certainly helps as the political causes he cares about have required a flurry of losses to build the momentum necessary for big wins. First, a Bernie Sanders supporter, then a two-time elected delegate to the Senate Democratic Party on a Democratic Socialist platform, then a leader of a voter-led initiative for rent control. So, he says he's learned a lot to run for office, change the conversation, and win. So, once again, thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate you.
Okay. So, I like to always get in first is, let's talk about you growing up. Where did you grow up? And, give us your early background here.
From Orange County, probably a decent analog to Burbank, Garden Grove. Instead of the studios, we had Disneyland in our backyard. But yeah, I went to Orange County High School of the Arts first it was for musical theater, and then it was for creative writing. Got my undergraduate degree at Chapman University in Orange in sociology. So, starting to go from an artist to, a critic of our society and what possible change agent,
You're a musician, so
Yes, sir.
Which instrument do you play?
I play guitar and I sing.
Oh, very good. Are you in a band or anything, or you in a little band, or?
We have a big band.
Oh, okay, and do you play professionally?
Yeah, my band's called Countless Thousands. We're very good. High energy indie rock, bordering on punk. I tend not to foreground that because it makes some people nervous, but it's fun. Music is supposed to be fun, and punk is one of the most fun genres there is.
And absolutely, I'd rather have people who are well-rounded and not just singly focused. So I think it's good to have a good background. Mine's basically in sports, but I mean, music is, I love music too. So
yeah, and being a front man of a band, and my first job was I was in a musical when I was a kid, when I was 15.
Playing what part?
I was just in the ensemble at the musical was Capistrano, which is about the Mission San Juan Capistrano original musical. A lot of fun. But I mean, you learn how to be in front of people. You learn how to speak in front of people. You learn how to react to what people are saying. And any performer will tell you, like, when you're up on stage and you have an audience, you get access to a different part of your brain. And like my wife is so witty. She's so fast in conversation. Like if we're just talking, her jokes are brutal and efficient. It's great. I love it. And I just can't keep up with her when it's just the two of us. But like, if you put a microphone in my hand and an audience of people out there, I don't know, like just something happens where I just get more incisive and reactive and clever in a way that I am just, 95% of the time, just not.
Okay. What about politics? So you did some activism, you got involved in things. What, not only what got you involved in politics, but what led you to say, I want to run for the city council in Burbank?
I mean, there's a lot of answers to that question. What got me involved in politics?
We'll get more to the issues in a second. I'm just more, what motivated you to start doing this?
I wanted to be part of the next generation of leaders. I feel that local, quite truthfully, the thing that got me thinking it needs to be me, I need to run for something, was the inauguration of Donald Trump. I think that that's one of the great embarrassments in our country's history. Certainly not Trail of Tears level, but it's up there. And on Inauguration Day 2017, I decided, it's got to be me. I got to run. I've been an activist for, worried about housing issues for all this time. I know how to talk in front of people. I know how to get ideas across. And none of the people that I really I was hoping would run. I was living in Glendale at the time, and none of the candidates that I was hoping would run decided to. It was a big opportunity. There were 3 open seats, and I just thought, all right, you know what? It's going to be me. I'll run. I have no name recognition. I have no money. I have no preparation. I've never done anything like this before. But I'm the only renter in this race, and I'm the only person that lives in the south half of the city. And going in and talking about these issues, talking about renters' issues, is a way to connect with people in a really genuine way. I didn't have to do the tap dance. I didn't have to perform. I didn't have to kowtow or try to toe a party line. I was there to be like, hey, we have basically just lawyers and retirees on our city council. And we talk about diversity, which is very, very important, but we have no economic diversity. We don't have diversity between homeowners and renters. We don't have geographic diversity, people from the south half of the city. And at the end of that campaign, I got 13% of the vote. Without any preparation. The Teachers Association had endorsed me. Like East Area Progressive Democrats had endorsed me. And it was a thrill. And I knew it was a long shot, but it was still like, okay, let's talk about these issues. Let's talk about housing affordability. There is nothing protecting tenants from the whims of the economy. There's nothing protecting tenants from a landlord that just decides, you know what, I'm going to sell. And when I sell, I'm going to sell to this like a hedge fund. And that hedge fund is going to raise your rent $1,400.
Let me, because because you're kind of getting into it now, but our first
can't help myself
is basically on rent control and landlord protections. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, the question is, so give us your viewpoint on this very complex issue and where you think it should go, because it's in front of the city council now. They're working on it. So what are your thoughts on that entire subject? So just go ahead and elaborate now.
Yeah. So after running for City Council in Glendale 2017, I co-founded the Glendale Tenants Union to get rent control, because I had a very competitively priced, let's say, apartment, and I didn't want to lose it. And like I've done, I've seen graphics, floating around that sort of match the math that I've done. And basically, average rent in the city is $2,500. Or rather, that's $2,544 for a 2-bedroom in Los Angeles County. Burbank's average is higher. If you take my way of thinking is going from $2,500 to $3,000 means, people just can't hang on to their home. That's my imagined yardstick of I'm going to lose my house, or I have to move because I've been priced out. And I saw online, it's like, how many years until you're evicted? At the state cap of 8.9%, basically 5% plus whatever the CPI, the Consumer Price Index is. The number of years that it would take to go from a $2,500 rent to a $3,000 rent is 2. If you get 2 maximum increases of 8.9%, your rent goes from $2,500 to $3,000 and you got to move for this thought experiment. If you do 5%, it's 3 years. If you do 3%, it's 6 years. There's a really big difference. People are talking about, we're talking about people who are in our community, people who deserve to be part of this community, who just didn't have the hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars required to buy a home at some point in the past. But they still deserve to raise their kids here. They still deserve to have access to the schools here. We still want them as neighbors because we care about each other and we're keeping each other safe. Renter or homeowner, you are providing value and the connective tissue of this community. And if that's the case, you deserve to be here. And for so long, our country has overemphasized the investment value of a thing without considering that its use value might exceed its investment value. When I was in grad school, I right at the beginning before COVID shut everything down, to save a little bit of money, I would I would park in Bel Air and ride my bike down to UCLA. And I asked the homeowner once, hey, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to be in your way. Do you mind if I park my car here, a couple of days a week? She's like, yeah, just do me a favor. That house is empty. That house is empty. That house is full. That house is empty. That house is empty. This house is our house, naturally, and then that house is empty. She's pointing out all of these incredible homes that have to be worth, $3, $4, $5+ million at that time. It's empty. If someone owns it, someone's holding on to it, but it's not being used. That to me is a travesty, because if you talk to any millennial homeowner, at some point they will use the word lucky. My wife and I were very lucky in that we bought our home 2 years ago. She had a very, very good job at the time. We were expecting our second child. We wanted to find something with 3 bedrooms so that our kids could have, a marginally less chaotic early childhood. Just so we could put the baby in her own room and our daughter could have her own space, and eventually we'd want them to share that space. But we wanted the 3rd bedroom. We could not find anything in this entire region that was under $1 million except one house. That's not true. There was another townhouse that when we went to go see it, and then we were like, hey, we like this house. As we were walking out, they're like, ooh, it's sold. Sorry. Just cash offer. Someone's just like, hey, it's no longer available. If you're in a position to pay cash for a home, that is such a huge advantage, which people my age don't have $1 million lying around. We have not been able to save because our rents have been so much higher, because the costs of childcare have been so much higher, because the cost of tuition and student loan debt is so much higher than previous generations. So my wife and I bought this house April 2022. We're so excited. She's 7 months pregnant. It's like, all right, we're making it happen. Can you believe this? You've been a tenant activist for years and years and years, and you got we're getting your master's degree in housing. Maybe we're one of the lucky ones. And then 6 days later, she got laid off. We expecting maternity leave. We were expecting so many things.
Life bring curveballs. That's what it is.
Yeah. And her parents were unable to help, and mine were unwilling to help. And it was just figure it out. And we went from a $1,400 rental, 2-bedroom rental, to a $5,000 3-bedroom mortgage. I keep telling people it's the last house that'll sell in Burbank for under $1 million. But I'm so cost burdened. I spend more on my mortgage than I earn. If my wife wasn't working as well, we would not be making ends meet. And I'm so adamant about rent control and tenant protections because I've been to city council meetings. I've known people who have I just got priced out of this. I love my community. I love this community, but my friends, my children had to move with me naturally, and they don't get to be friends with their friends anymore. They have to go to this whole new school. I hear people's pushback of well, no one's entitled to anywhere. You're not entitled to Burbank. You're not entitled to Beverly Hills, which is a very ungenerous way to put it, because Burbank is not Beverly Hills.
But it still sounds elitist.
It does sound, yeah, you said it, not me. But like, nobody is entitled to anywhere. But my point is, like, everybody deserves long-term security. They deserve to, if they want to contribute to this community, they should have the means to do so. They should have the resources. We can't just say, well, I need to be able to charge as much as humanly possible for this, because it's a one-way street. There are diminishing returns to that kind of thing. Now, granted, landlords are entitled to a fair rate of return. And
well, you did just state though that your tuition all these things went up, and they go up substantially, probably more than 5%, 6%.
Yeah, I mean,
landlord costs also go up. You know, Water and Power in Burbank raised their costs like 6-7% 2 years in a row. Everything else seems cost for landlords also. So do you understand that their plight also is, that they're caught in this same vicious cycle as a renter is, except their hands are tied if there is rent control on them. So how do you tell them that, hey, there's a way out of this for you also?
Well, there's a fair rate of return built into all rent control in California. And if you have something where, hey, my roof needs a massive repair, that can be part of a renting, like you need to apply to, I mean, honestly, I kind of forget the specific mechanics of it, but you can apply to say, like, I need an exception in this case because I have a major $20,000 repair to see to. And then there's that, like, I saw a study very recently. I wish I had it on hand. I can't really cite or quote it. But the basics of it is like a third of rental income covers a mortgage. Another third covers expenses. And then there's another third of like, all right, well, that's your profit or there is space, and if it's the kind of thing I have a real problem with folks who come back and say, like, I'm just as much a victim as you, or I'm just in as much a bad spot as a renter who's getting a rent hike. You own a building, and if you need to, you can sell the building and make a profit. It seems like housing is the only commodity in our society that is always guaranteed to go up. Like people talk about, like, I at one of the recent forums, somebody challenged me on it of like, well, you took a risk to buy your house. Like, yes, that's true. But he was unwilling to acknowledge that he took a risk buying these apartment buildings. People don't want to consider that the use value, it should be a consideration with things that are necessary for people to live: housing, water, food, clean air. Too often it's just like, well, it's mine and I should be able to do with it what I want. It's like, okay, but what about families? When was the last time you saw two? Like, I'm thinking of like, you see one stroller go by, count how long it takes you to see a second stroller the next time you're just sort of out in the neighborhood. Like, it is so hard to start a family anymore and to maintain a family. We're losing families. Our enrollment is going down in the city at our schools, and that affects the amount of money that the schools take in, which affects the actual quality of the education that's delivered. And so when I talk about protecting tenants, protecting people who are trying to buy into the ladder of the middle class, because at the same time, it's this argument of like, well, I worked hard to get what you want. I'm like, I will not dispute that anyone, anywhere worked hard to have what they have. My problem is that there are a lot of people who do not acknowledge the advantages that they have, that they weren't aware of at the time, that are no longer available to people like me, because we just got in after the market was torpedoed in 2008 and before then. At the same time, there's, I got my master's in urban planning. So we learned all about segregation. We learned all about redlining. There was this nefarious practice called contact mortgages, because African-American families were not offered traditional mortgages. they couldn't get insured. So the only people that would, there was a format of a home loan where basically these vultures would come in and say, all right, so we'll buy this house for you, African-American family, and if you sign a contact mortgage. What this means is that if you miss one payment at any time, if you're late on one payment, you forfeit everything that you've spent and you forfeit the house. Now, I'm not trying to draw a comparison between the plight of the African-American family in 1940s and 50s America to millennials now. I'm trying to say that, like, there is an incumbency bias. There's an incumbency bonus. Prop 13 and other laws protect long-term home incumbency. And that comes at a cost to people who are trying to get in. And we are not creating housing that is appropriate for working people and working families. We are right now just creating, either you can build an ADU in your backyard if you've got $100,000 plus lying around, which you do, awesome. That's a good way to keep families together. You know, grandma and grandpa live in the ADU. Adult children and their kids live in the main house. I've seen that a lot here in town. And it's encouraging, you know, multi-generational living. I wish that we had access to more of my family as we were raising our kids. We'll spread out. But it's either an ADU or it's a luxury apartment, you know, and those start renting at $4,000, $5,000, sometimes $6,000. You know, I spoke to a woman who lives near Huerta, who had just sold her home at that time, you know, for the average cost, which is like $1.2 million. The mortgage that new owner was going to be paying was $10,000 a month because of what the interest rates were at the time. I mean, even just back with my example, if I wanted to try to get the loan that I need to have my home right now, I could not. My family got the home loan during these 7 weeks it was possible for us to get the loan. And we lucked out by finding a home that was, you know, in our price range at the time, so to speak. You know, going into it, we're like, it's going to be a stretch, but we can make it. But if we have an adjustable rate mortgage, so 10 years after the signing of that loan, the rates will change to whatever it is in, you know, 2032. I don't know if we'll be able to afford it at that point. I don't know if that's going to shoot my mortgage up from $5,300 a month to $6,000 or $7,000, you know? But I mean, my point is, like, I've been studying housing for so long. I've been studying the housing affordability crisis for so long. People's concerns about you know, my ability to make ends meet. I want to, you know, like, I'm a good landlord. Those are valid. But in a crisis, I'm more concerned about the people who are in crisis. And the crisis is the people who do not own things, or who, you know, people like me who are severely cost burdened, which is I spend more than 30%, and I spend 50% of my family's income just on our housing. These are the people that need help, and they need help now. So, I mean, like, our response as a city, our response as a society should be like, who needs the most help? You know, what can we do? And to understand that ownership works for some people, doesn't work for everybody. But young people and the newcomers to the market, people of color, seniors on fixed incomes, we don't have this access to the same tools anymore. If you didn't buy 10 years ago or more, the percentage that you're going to be spending on your house or your home it's either break yourself to barely afford a thing, save nothing for your retirement. You know, I don't know if I'm going to be able to retire. You know, that's the other thing. It's like, well, just keep working. Like, okay, so I'm going to be working into my 80s. That's just, you know, like, is that dignified? We are in so many ways sacrificing or expecting young people to sacrifice their future so that we just don't adjust to status quo that isn't working for us. You know, that's where I come in.
Well,
to challenge that.
Nothing like trying to get a passionate answer on a question, huh? So we hit that first question, which is right up your alley. So
Yeah.
I think
I only got like one more question.
No. I think it's really important though that people understand what you're all about, and that's I think you just showed it right there and gave a good honest answer, which I appreciate.
Yeah, it's like I have a hard time because I want to empathize with people, and like people work hard. They're entitled to the benefit of their work. It's just that so am I. I work so hard. My family works so hard. We've given up so much, but we do not have the same guarantees because we bought in 2022 when the market was crazy, and it's gotten so much worse since then.
Well, we're going to move on to transportation.
Sure.
Because once again, I appreciate the response. And like I said, I wanted you to go on and get everything out that you wanted to get out. Because what's your background in housing. So I know it's important to you.
This dog is a winner. No longer skittish. Yes. Now we are friends.
He does like to make friends with people.
Excellent.
Okay. So give us your thoughts on the bus rapid transit plan that's going to go down all the BRT. So what are your thoughts on that right now? It's kind of a contentious issue on both sides.
Yeah. I mean, we need more regional transit. We need good regional transit. We need to provide people options, not just to get people out of their cars, because we absolutely should be trying to get people out of the cars. Do you remember that week right at the beginning of COVID when everyone, there was a lockdown? You look out over the hills, like, driving up the 134 to Pasadena, you look out, you see, like, you can see the ripples in the ocean because it was so clear. We want people, with climate change being such a present issue, Octobers are getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. We need to change the way we think about transportation. We need to change the way we're thinking about energy use. And there are a lot of people who do not want to own cars. There are a lot of people who cannot own cars. There's plenty of seniors who just can't drive. They deserve freedom of movement in the city just as well as anybody else. Southern California developed so specifically during the era of the automobile that the assumption that everyone's going to own a car, there will be a free place to park it, and there will be a free place to park it wherever you need to go. Like, those assumptions are everywhere, and those are expensive assumptions. Any parking space that is built now costs like $40,000 a piece. But it's not direct. You don't pay for it out of pocket. You don't say, I'll have one parking space, please. You have to put that cost into everything else. So homes are more expensive. Housing, multifamily housing is more expensive. Restaurants are more expensive. Like, things are more expensive because you have to expect that free parking. Back in the olden times, I used to drive for Lyft, and moving from Burbank or Glendale, there were people who lived Burbank, Glendale, Atwater Village, Silver Lake, who did not want to own a car, but who wanted to get to the west side. And I asked them once, like, is this really cheaper than owning your own car? Is it easier than owning your car? And he said, yes to both. So, I mean, there are people out there who do not want to own cars. But at the same time, like, my daughter is fascinated with buses. She just loves buses. And she also loves the Shadow Tea House in Pasadena. I would love to be able to take the bus with my daughter to go to the Shadow Tea House in Pasadena. That sounds great. We need to provide people options. And the instinct is to say no one's going to use it. Well, that may be true of you. Like you and your response, you as you're thinking, it doesn't make sense for how things are working for you right now because you don't use a bus on a regular. You don't use rail on a regular. But if the option presents itself and it's attractive and it's clean and it's safe and it's affordable, maybe you start folding it into your daily use. Like, I used to work for the Riverside Planning Department, Riverside County, and I'd have to be in my car for an hour at a time. And I developed sciatica, like nerve damage in my leg as a 37-year-old dude with this commute to Riverside and back twice a day. It was horrible. If I had the option to take a bus or light rail and not have it, even if it was like an hour and 15 minutes instead of an hour or hour 20 minutes, hour and a half, that would be something I would have considered.
We'll get back to a little more transportation, but let's get back to Olive and the BRT. Yep. Are you for a single lane? Are you for a mixed flow? What's your How do you feel on that?
Dedicated lane with signal prioritization. So basically, if it's going to be the bus rapid transit system, it needs to be rapid.
They have said, though, it's only they at the most take maybe 1 minute off the trip.
Who's they?
The Metro.
The Metro said take 1 minute?
About a minute off the trip by having a single lane compared to mixed flow in that section of Burbank, yet the traffic will probably back up for 8 to 10 minutes.
Well, then we can get into the urban planning concepts of induced demand and reduced demand. So induced demand is the idea that when you widen a highway, everyone hears about, oh man, dude, did you hear? There's an extra lane on there. It's going to be smooth as silk. We're going to get in there. It's going to be so much faster. Everybody then chooses to use that route. And for the first few months, the initial opening, oh man, it's just great. And then the demand is induced. More people choose that route, and it slows right back down to how it was. Widening highways doesn't work. The opposite effect is called reduced demand. Oh man, all is going to be slower now. We can't go that way anymore. We got to go a different way.
But what if that way involves going through all the residential neighborhoods now? I
mean, people are already doing that to a limited degree, but also it will spread out the use of those intermediate streets and not just have, because right now it's just like the one street is the main street. Like, I can't remember offhand. I've knocked so many doors. I've spoken to so many people, thousands of doors, thousands of people. And yeah, in that immediate section, especially like that 5-point cluster, or rather that 6-point cluster at Olive and Sparks, like that. Oh man, that is it's not great.
Yeah, they've been talking about actually reconfiguring that intersection for a while now.
I would be interested to see proposals. Not being a transportation, like I took transportation classes. I like transportation policy. A theory rather. It is the other side of the housing coin. You know, like what makes a city? Housing and transportation. You know, and
let's go a little more into transportation. The next question is, you know, how do you feel that the Burbank bus serves the city? Would you like to see anything else added to the transportation system in Burbank to help Burbank residents?
Yeah, this came up a while back at the Streets for All forum. I'd like to see more circulators, more bus circulators. I'd like to see a lot more north-south connectivity. That's true of like bike infrastructure as well, but we don't have a lot of north-south movement in the city. So I wanted to see that Green Line sort of do 2 opposite flow circulators using Hollywood or Buena Vista as the main, like the spine, so that people get moving around. I'm not an expert on using buses. I've gotten an invitation, or rather there was a challenge from a constituent, basically like, hey, ride the bus with, depend on the bus for a month, for a week rather.
Right.
And, you know, like, so you really understand what it's like and how much time you're giving up to use public transportation as it is, to find out where all the weak points are, really understand this thing better. And I said, I want to take you up on this challenge. I cannot. You know, like I have to spend every spare moment I possibly can out talking to people. I have 2 small children. Like they need me to pick them. My wife usually works a little bit later than I do. So I mean, like I need that flexibility of transportation right now. So I can't accept that challenge. You know, I appreciate exactly where it's coming from, and I look forward to in calmer times really understand it, really riding the system, depending on the system for a bit, understanding it better. So I'm not an expert, but I know people who are, and I want to really integrate with that, really get into that perspective. Because the instinct if you use a car is to just be like, no one wants to use it. But there are a lot of people that have to use it, in addition to some people who would choose to do so if they could. So I mean, just in general, like we are so car dependent. And
well, I think the transportation is not really helping us at all. I mean, we're not really seeing, like I say in Burbank, there's really no transit in Burbank for people to take. You say north-south routes.
No.
And, back to what you say about the amount of time spent, if you look at it, you go to Google Maps and, for directions, and you can push to the side, okay, how long does it take if I walk? How long does it take if I drive? How long does it take if I bike? And how long does it take if I take a bus?
Yeah.
and you'll find the bus is sometimes 2 to 3 times longer than a car, and sometimes even the bicycle is shorter than taking a bus.
Yeah, you're talking to someone who rode his bike from here to UCLA, and it was marginally faster than driving. I can't imagine how much longer it would have taken to use a bus. We had a volunteer really early on in the campaign who lived out in Monrovia, and it took him like an hour, hour 40 to be in Burbank to help NAR. It's like I'm looking at it right now just to get home. If I want to use the system as it exists now from where I am, to get, here in the beautiful Media District, if I want to get back to the Rancho adjacent district next to the 5 freeway at Alameda, that is a 40-minute endeavor. I could probably,
You could probably walk. Yes, I think you could.
Let's find out together, you and I. Walking, an hour and 10 minutes or a 40-minute bus drive.
I don't know. That's a slow walk. 'Cause I used to walk from here to Jordan Junior High School back in the day, and it took about 45 minutes. So it wasn't. Anyhow, you're in the Media District, and right now you're in the Media District adjacent. So the Media District specific plan is now starting to hit the forefront. What do you believe should be done to protect residents and to stimulate business?
Yeah, man, I need to see the specific plan. This is something that was an early proposal of mine of like, look, you want an urban planner to read your urban plans. You want an urban planner to read the neighborhood plan. When I have time, I look forward to reviewing this thing. But my initial knee-jerk reactions are these. The big box luxury developments, they're not for us. They're not. We have so many of those units right now. I would like to see a rental registry to find out exactly how many of these luxury apartments are vacant. That figures into some of the other considerations I like to make around tenant protections. I want to. There should be a difference between the rental, owning a rental as a hedge fund and owning a rental as a mom and pop. Another conversation for a later time. But basically, Media District is a gem. It is a very specific. You've got that beautiful the village with they got rid of the old chip shop. That was my favorite restaurant in town. Rid of it. I'm so sad. Because that would be like the one thing of like, all right, we can barely afford to eat out anymore, but
restaurants on that street last about a year to 2 years.
All of the time has been there forever.
There's 17 restaurants there in a 3-block radius with 0 parking. So how do you sustain a business in that regard, Yeah,
again, it's 0 free parking. We're not, there's parking available, but it's like $6, man. It's pretty brutal. But again, that goes back to the assumption of the only tool we will use to get around is a car, and using the car must be free. I would be interested Okay, so I took the parking class with Donald Shoup at UCLA. He literally wrote the book, The High Costs of Free Parking. And the idea that parking will be ubiquitous and free does mask the costs of some things. And I would be interested to see charging for parking in such a way that it incentivizes the availability of parking spaces on the street. And then the money that is used in that parking can be put into alternative transit options. Again,
okay.
Another conversation on the
You never saw my notes. It's amazing how you are morphing from one question to the next in the order I have them.
I didn't get to start with the video just yet.
I think this is great because these are all, so my next question.
I'm going to answer this question when you ask your next question.
Okay, well, you can do them both at the same time because they commingle then.
Okay.
So it sounds like parking meters are coming to downtown Burbank.
I would be interested.
What are your thoughts there? And should we look at putting them in additional areas to generate income also, like Magnolia Park or Glen Oaks or other areas? So that's we've had doing several meetings about that now. It's coming in front of the council. So never had parking meters in Burbank before.
Yeah.
And so what do you think about all that?
I love that Orange Grove parking structure. There's always something there, and it's always available. It's always free. I could see a very good argument for, especially on San Fernando, since it's a one-way these days, to put meters that charge appropriately for the use. The idea of I don't remember the term. Look it up. The High Cost of Free Parking. Donald Shoup, 2005. laughs at his own jokes in class all the time.
Don't we all?
I don't know, I'm laughing at yours. The idea is to charge enough so that there will always be 1 to 2 spaces open.
That's the plan. That's the plan they actually have in Burbank now. Right. That's the plan they're coming up with electronic, and they're going to do by demand and by, the goal is to have 20% of spots always open.
Okay. Yeah. So that's flexible. It's annoying. That's another cost that we're going to have to incur. And, it sucks as a political candidate to be talking about something that I know is unpopular, but my master's degree is spinning on the wall back at home, and I feel like I have to. Creating that availability is part of it, generating the revenue, and then specifically making sure that revenues from parking are put into either beautifying our public spaces, creating like bus shelters, creating parklets, like making third spaces more available and safer, or alternate infrastructure, alternate transportation infrastructure, like protected bike lanes, like more and better bus lines, to create the options where it's like it's cheaper to ride the bus. And you know what? It's about the same time these days. I might as well, incentivizing other uses. Because a lot of times it's like, right now our bus service, to get back home, it's going to cost me 40 minutes. There's just not that much available right now. Just not a lot of lines that are moving. But if we're charging for parking, the Flex-Time Donald Shoup model, it generates money that we can then reinvest. The point isn't to just dump it into the general fund, or put it into people's salaries that work for the city, but just instead earmark it for these really specific purposes that directly dovetail with what people are doing in these spaces. Now to get back to the media district,
okay,
and that question, the neighborhood plan. So I've been talking for a while about more in different formats of housing. I think that the big box luxury apartments we have enough, we don't need more. What we need are more in different formats. I would like to start incentivizing smaller developments for smaller developers, and have 4 to 6 unit townhomes be more common, and especially in our commercial corridors, because that's the big resource that a lot of cities have right now, are underutilized commercial areas. We've got the IKEA building that's empty. We've got the Fry's. We've got Kmart. So all like the big format stuff. We also have the smaller format stuff like Riley's Boutique on Magnolia it's across from Palm Coffee, which I love. But I think Riley's Boutique has been closed since even before COVID. There are opportunities, and the state is constantly putting more legislation behind speeding up the development, making it cheaper and easier to build these sorts of recaptured commercial spaces into residential. I would like to see what can be done with smaller format multifamily developments in the media district. Because we need more housing everywhere. But when you don't spread it out broadly, you get those big giant buildings that make the neighborhood feel like a
kind of like they're doing it past Riverside right now.
Yes, past Riverside, exactly. People talk about 7 stories,
yep,
going to be casting shadows on people's homes and pools and stuff. Not great. But my problem, the problem is we're dealing with the consequences of the decisions made by councils prior to 2020. These are chickens that are coming home to roost that the present council, even the previous council, had nothing to do with, because the state housing element is it's a thing that every city needs to provide every 8 years of here's where we could put housing. Here's how much housing we have produced. For basically up until 2020 or so, it was a paper exercise of just show us where you could put it. If you can't put it anywhere, all right, it's annoying, but it's fine. But starting in 2020, we got puppy action.
Yes.
What's up, buddy? He can bark.
So he can.
All right. You give it a minute.
He'll keep going. We'll just keep going here. I don't think,
All right.
People understand that we got a little dog doing his job.
Yep. Keeping it safe. Oh, there's a flashing light coming from outside.
Right. That's our on the air light.
Oh, okay. Perfect. I thought it was like a truck out front. All right. Anyways, God, what was I talking about? The dog. The dog threw me off so hard.
Well, we can move on here if you're not.
I don't want to move on. I don't want to move on. Okay, so that's right. Councils prior to 2020 never took the housing crisis seriously, did not spread out housing throughout the city, but instead we're just like, well, we need to preserve the character of our neighborhoods. You know, when
I'll tell you what, Mike. Let's pause for a second.
he's really going after.
Yeah, he's going after us. Let's pause for a second, and we'll be right back after this dog intervention. Well, we're back with you, and the Dodger alarm has been solved. So sorry about that. We apologize for the break here.
Yeah.
So, Mike, we were talking about councils of the past, and why don't you continue your thoughts on that?
Yes, thank you. So, councils prior to 2020 never took the housing crisis seriously, and because they came from a generation of leaders who were concerned about neighborhood character. You know, retirees, people with time, and you know they've just been around a while. I'm sure they love their city, but also they have a very specific perspective. And this perspective is, I'm a homeowner. I've been here for 30 plus years. And I don't want anything to look different. I don't want anything to change. I don't want my commute to get longer. And certainly there's merit in that. But all the while, we were underproducing housing. Commutes were getting longer because the only housing being created was in the exurbs. You know, we've got all this housing going up in Lancaster or Valencia, and nothing here. We have one housing unit for every 6 jobs in the city. Our population goes from 100,000 to 250,000 during the daytime, you know, because we're not accounting for, councils previous to now, we're not accounting for the need as it existed in the city. And so to sort of be mindful of neighborhood character, they're sort of like, well, let's just put some housing and some multifamily housing in just these little tiny clumps. Basically, end of the day, state of California said, you didn't produce enough housing. You did not make your regional housing needs assessment goal, and therefore we are taking away local control. And so now the new generation coming in are having to clean up for this problem. Like we've got these massive buildings going in. Like granted, we've built more units over the past I think 4 years than in the 20 prior to that. But it's the one format. It's just luxury apartments. So the idea that I'm trying to push is smaller format multifamily development for mom and pop developers. You know, I've spoken to people who are like, I want to build some apartments, but I can't because it's just so hard to do it through the city right now. To get what we need to get the permits, to get everything, you know, get the plans, get things moving along. Granted, the high power, you know, the big box luxury developments, those go faster because they've got a huge legal team behind it. If it's just, you know, Peggy and Bill who just want to put up some more housing because they've got the money and, you know, they want to try to create this thing, it's a huge burden and the burden turns people off. So trying to incentivize smaller development on smaller lots, that's what I want to do. And I'm looking forward very strongly to being able to read these neighborhood plans, you know, with my critical background. Like I studied this. I do this every day.
If it helps you at all, we have one of the meetings from the district plan on my Burbank on the YouTube channel. We have the downtown parking meeting on the YouTube channel.
Okay.
So we have a lot of those meetings that the city's held. If you want to go back and review any of those and take a look at the city's proposals. So
my Burbank YouTube channel, putting it.
Yes.
I look forward to having enough time to review these.
Yeah. We try to get a lot of things on there, and it's we're always busy. Trust me.
I trust you.
So what areas do you feel the city is going in the wrong way? And what would you do if elected to change or improve that direction?
The wrong way. Oh, I tell you what I'm worried about more than anything else. I'm a grassroots candidate, right? My reach is as far as my feet will take me. I'm going out, like I said, this campaign's knocked over 14,000 doors. I personally have knocked over 3,000 doors, like conversations with people. And I worked really hard to do the fundraising thing that is necessary to have this kind of conversation with the city. And I believe my team and I have raised about $20,000, probably more than that, raised and spent about that. And we exist in a post-Citizens United society where a local council race, where the the job earns you $20K a year is being funded. There are some candidates who are being given or spent on their behalf $500,000. Mailers in your inbox every single day.
Well, isn't
$10,000
that proportional, though, to all the other races? Are you looking at how much is being spent on Senate right now for that job that doesn't pay that much?
In a local race?
Well, I'm just talking about, isn't that proportional, though, as you move up the ladder for county supervisor, for whatever, LA City Council member? It's proportional as far as how much money is spent on these campaigns.
Well, I think that's an appeal to normalcy of just like, that's how it is for everyone else. That's how it should be.
Didn't say it's right.
Yeah.
I just said, isn't that proportional of what's going on in the rest of
I don't think so. I will say that, look, I'm excited to cast my ballot for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. I think that a lot of people have, a lot of progressives and liberals and leftists have donated to her campaign. And it's been difficult to keep up. But I mean, like, this election cycle has been so unlike the previous ones, just in terms of raw dollars. I mean, when I ran in 2017, I gloated that, basically I had raised $3,000 and I got 3,000 votes. I spent $1 per vote. And I was up against people who, the three of them put together who won these 3 seats, collectively raised and spent $250,000 between 3 people. Now, 7 years later, there's 2 people and it's $500,000. I'm sorry, $630,000 independent expenditure. I just think that's grotesque. That's not democracy. That is a hijacking of our dialogue. I can't have the same kind of conversation. And you know what? Maybe that's helping in some ways because so many people are sick of that format.
Oh, absolutely.
Do I buried in these messages?
Do I agree with you? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're in a nonpartisan election in Burbank. We don't go by Democrat and Republican, but yet the outside money being dumped in here is tremendous. But the problem is because of PACs and everything else that our country says it's fine to do, there's no choice in it. And I wish, I wish we could pass a campaign reform, but even so, outside PACs would still have their influence over, and it wouldn't have to go by local conditions.
Here's the response to that, which is, I'm going to spend my money a lot more wisely than some of these other candidates, just because I have to. I have to put a lot more thought into where am I going to get the most return on every dollar that I raise. Every dollar that people give me is a vote of confidence of like, we think you're the person for this job. So I want to use that money very, very wisely. And what we've done is we've spent it on people to go out and knock doors and talk to people, get the flyers up. We're not advertising, we're talking. What would help people like me or people like me are matching funds. Of Los Angeles does this. If you fundraise past a certain threshold and if you agree to certain limits with the money that you raise thereafter, then you are given funds matched by the city. But just like here's, just for example, $15,000. Like that would, if I fundraised $15K and then was provided $15K by the city to have an honest conversation with the city, I wouldn't spend that on mail. I wouldn't spend that on harassing.
Well, I understand that, but if you get $15,000, there's 10 candidates that each get $15,000. That's $150,000 of taxpayer money in the city. So do you think that's the way people want to see that go?
I think that people would be a lot more willing to provide that kind of money in good faith and say, like, I want local candidates who are responsive to my needs have a real shot. And maybe degrees of that are voluntary and maybe degrees aren't. But just like whatever Los Angeles is doing to properly fund grassroots candidates with matching funds, we should be looking into that. I want to see ranked choice voting so that people don't worry about spoiler candidates. If you're a first-time candidate, just talking about renters issues, and you have a mohawk like I did in 2017, if there were ranked choice, I bet you I would have gotten more than those 3,000 votes.
What about council districts? That's saying that they tried to shove down our throats about a yeyear ago, and they're fighting against it. So,
well, shoving down the throats packages the conversation like now trying to defend the idea. You put me on the defensive of like, we have districts for so many things. We have districts for the school board. We have districts for, Los Angeles is
Well, they didn't have a choice in that either. The school district was forced into it, but it was the same person.
right, but it's more
They couldn't fight back because they didn't have the resources.
Yeah. It's more representative of the neighborhood. Like I live Rancho adjacent, so like I'm sure that my district, such as it ends up being, would include the Rancho. So I would need to be responsive to both Rancho adjacent needs and the Rancho's needs. But that's still 20,000 people and not 100,000 people. We have this system set up where, like I heard that criticism in 2017 of like, well, you're just building little fiefdoms. Where no one, if you're in that area, then no one can ever bump you out. It's like, we already have that, but just in the wealthiest areas in town. I am very encouraged that the candidates that keep winning elections here in Burbank are younger and more progressive. We've got 2 renters on council. We've got a cost-burdened homeowner on there right now who's moving up to state assembly. Very excited for, vote Nick Schultz. He's a good one for state assembly. So we're getting more and more, we're getting closer and closer to representing the city, and not only, due to just the economics of it all, but like, because there are people like me who are saying, I deserve a shot at this too. Like, it can't just be retirees, and it can't just be lawyers. It can't just be people who are independently wealthy, who are just like, that sounds fun. It's so much work. Like,
yes,
it's so much work, but like you need to have the right priorities to make sure that you're serving your you're serving your community. We were asked one of the questions at the League of Women Voters was like, should Burbank City Council weigh in on international issues? It was a way to talk about like, well, the ceasefire resolution that our city council unanimously, voted through. I read it. I supported it. And most candidates said, no, man, should stay in our lane. My reaction was, people vote for leaders because they want leadership. They want comforts. They want to be seen. They want to be heard, especially in moments of crisis. Like if you're an elected official, you are responsible to reach out and to be available and to be heard and responsive to what people care about. And like the ceasefire resolution specifically affected me because I'd be the first Jew in the history of Burbank City Council. And I want, like I said in my comments, my heart broke for the victims of the October 7th attack, and my heart continues to break for the tens of thousands of people who have died in Palestine since then. And it was so important to so many people in our community that our elected leadership say something. And so they did. And that's how it should be. We are here to be responsive to the needs, to people's needs, to make sure that we just don't because I've been in the position where it's like, hey, city council member, I have a huge problem. I'm scared. It's like, and you get the pat in the head of like, well, I care about everybody in the city. Well, that's not why I'm saying like, hey, I have this problem and I'm scared. What can the city do to help? Well, we're responsive to everybody. It's like, that's not what I'm saying. Like, there's like, I'm in a, like, you heard what I'm saying? Like, be responsive to everybody, or be available to everybody, yes, but be responsive, be responsible to, hear people out, and that's one of the things that I think that makes me such a compelling candidate is I'm going through what so many people are going through right now, cost burden. I'm trying to raise a family where half my money goes to my house and the other quarter goes towards the childcare necessary for both me and my wife to work, to pay off these, to pay the, we don't really go out to eat. We don't go on vacation. We don't really get to relax all that much. We are worried all the time. And that perspective is essential on council. Like, I don't want to hear folks, coming up like, oh, you know what? I hear you. I really do. I hear you. It's like, okay, but are you living what I'm living? Can you really understand what I'm going through if you're not going, if you haven't gone through this, if you're not going through it now? Because what, like, the trials and tribulations folks had gone through in their own, young adulthood are not equivalent to what's happening now. And I say that as well as, like, an almost 40-year-old person. Like, we've got the new cultural crisis of, these podcast hosts who are convincing all our young men, or trying to convince young men rather, that women are the problem. That you're fine. You're a dude. That means you're powerful. You're strong. You got to stand up straight, make your own bed, and subjugate those people around you. It's like people hear toxic masculinity and they think, oh, all masculinity is toxic. Is that what you think? No, man. The adjective is important. There is masculinity. There's my version of masculinity, which is I like to wear pink. I have tattoos. I like to I'm comfortable in my own skin, and I'm emotionally available to my family and my friends. My children have seen me cry before. Like, it's important that I present to my kids a complete picture of what a man is. And then there's toxic masculinity, which is this idea of like men have to only either be angry or in control. And that is absolutely wrong. But that line is being pumped into young men through YouTube and through podcasts, such that young men are growing more and more conservative, just because they don't have those same kind of role models. So like when I'd say like, I'm not like you older generations, you're not going through what I go through. I will acknowledge at the same time, I'm not going through what younger generations are going through, but like when I was talking to like the League of Conservation Voters, during their endorsement process, like the climate crisis terrifies me, absolutely terrifies me. And I know that one day it's going to be terrifying to my children as well. And so in that moment, when they look at me and they're crying and they're so scared because they understand a fraction of what's happening to this planet, and they say, Daddy, what do? I just want to have a good answer in that moment. You know what I mean? And so like, that's why I'm getting so involved in all this stuff. And there are so many people like me going through all this stuff, and they need to be heard. They need to be provided resources. They need to be prioritized. It can't just be these solutions that we've trotted out for decades that have not worked. And we are starting to churn, like I imagine things like churning a boat. You can't just flip a boat. That boat takes time to curve around, but it needs people like me who are going to prioritize creating different systems, bringing those different priorities in, and not just being like, well, this is what happened before. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it'll work this time. I don't have a lot of faith in that, but I have a lot of faith in the expertise, the lived experience that people like me are going through. And, I got a lot of faith in my master's degree.
There you go.
Yeah. Bringing it back on.
Well, Mike, we appreciate you being here. And what I always do at the end of every podcast, you know where your camera is, and I give you whatever time you want. You can look right in that camera. You can talk to the voters yourself, and you can tell them why they should vote for you. Put the little check mark next to your name for Burbank City Council. So this is your time. Please use it as you'd like to.
Okay. First of all, thank you. I appreciate you watching all the way through to this. I'm sure that there's some stuff that I've said that you disagreed with. I hope that you've heard at least some stuff that you do agree with. But we're in a housing crisis, and I'm a housing policy professional. We're in a democratic crisis where people just threaten our elected leaders for clicks, and I am a twice elected delegate to the state Democratic Party who's run on a populist platform. And I'm an retired amateur fighter, who's not afraid of putting myself between a vulnerable population and people who are accusing them of horrible things. I'm a staunch ally of the LGBTQIA community. I'm a staunch ally of our educators. I'm endorsed by the Burbank Teachers Association. I'm endorsed by the California Working Families Party, East Area Progressive Democrats, the Teamsters Joint Council 42. I'm one of 2 union members in this race. I'm one of 2 people with children in Burbank public schools. I am living a life like most young people in this city. And I want to be part of that next generation of leaders and change makers. Like as I'm going around, I'm knocking on doors again. I've knocked over, me personally knocked over 3,000. The team's knocks, we're coming up on like 15. And I keep hearing, you know what? I'm glad you're doing this. No one's ever come to my door before, and what that tells me is that people haven't reached out. Like, I want to reach out. I want to try to be there. I want to try to be available to people. And at the same time, I want to show the community that like our leaders should come from within, and the people who are experiencing crisis need to be in control or first in the conversation about resolving the crises. You know, as a housing insecure homeowner who spent almost a decade as a tenants' rights activist, I submit to you, I, in my master's degree in housing and my years of experience working in housing policy, I'm the best person for this job. So I hope they'll consider me.
All right. Well, Mike Van Gorder, thank you very much for coming in. We appreciate it.
Sure, thank you.
I'm know people watch and listen because we have this on YouTube, plus we have it on 13 different podcast channels. So they get a lot of listens. So I think it's good that people get to know who you are. So we appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Once again, this is Craig Sherwood saying thank you for watching. And if you're a candidate and your name appears in the Burbank ballot, please send an email to news@myburbank.com, and we will be glad to give you a shout out. So there's a little quick little shout of Mike there. There's these campaign flyers. So
thousands of these indoors.
Okay.
Anywhere you've seen one of those, I've wanted to try to talk to.
All right. Well, thank you very much for watching again, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers.
Thank you for watching the latest My Burbank video. If you have it in your heart, please consider helping us by clicking on the super thanks down below. Or even better, go to our channel and consider a membership. Your support is what keeps My Burbank going strong.